when a murder is discovered.
It was a female who had her head and her hands removed. And she had been found in what can be described as like a duffel bag. And she had her wrist and her ankles bound.
It doesn't just destroy one life.
I truly thought, okay, this cannot happen. This is an entire family. You're talking grandmother, mother, kids, 3 generations.
It tears communities apart.
When her body was located, she was nude, she was deceased, she had some ligature marks on her neck.
It's up to the police to not only solve the mystery.
I then went round the house looking for anything that might obviously be stolen.
And track down the killer, but bring them to justice.
There's 2 bodies found. Your first thought is, oh my goodness me, is there a serial killer?
In this episode, a mother and her 3 young children are murdered.
When they took Sadie out of the water with a rock tied to her foot with a pillowcase and no top and wearing only panties, I mean, you can't unsee that. And I watched some officers crying that day.
Meet the murder detectives.
In this job, you see so much death and people hurt each other and just death and destruction and pain. You just get numb to it.
Who reveal how they caught the killer.
Every single day, I wanted to get up and hurt him because we had to sit there and look at him every single day.
On the 19th of December 2001, Trish Miller, a detective with the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office in the state of Oregon, was alerted that a child's body had been found floating in a coastal inlet at the seaside city of Walport.
I was in Walport on another investigation and a call came on the radio of a child deceased in the Lint Slough. A resident of the senior community, he lived with his mom. He was coming back from the store and he observed the child in the water. And so he called 911. Since I was close, I responded.
When Trish arrived at the Lint Slough, patrol officers had already recovered the body. It was a young boy.
It was December 19th, so it was cloudy and cold. The tide was low, so there was more of a shore. His body was a few feet out in the water. Kind of in the center area where it's kind of a rocky shore is where they went in the water and pulled him up. He was on a tarp. I got here, I inspected his body for any injuries, any cause of death. I didn't see anything. He was a well-groomed little boy. He had a good haircut. His nails were cut and trimmed. He was clean. I didn't see any injury. So at that point, we didn't know where he came from. It was kind of shocking because at any moment I expected a hysterical parent to come running up and saying, my child is missing. At first we believed that he was maybe staying with grandparents or family and maybe wandered away during a nap because he only had his underwear on and that he fell in the water and drowned.
Trish and local police started knocking doors in the immediate area, but nobody knew who the boy was.
It isn't unusual to find a child's body when it hasn't been reported. And it's more difficult because a child is an innocent victim. They don't have a criminal history, they don't have a past. Where an adult, you can get more information because if they a driver's license, part of the community, jobs, family history. If you don't know who the children are, it's very difficult.
Trish was appointed lead detective. As more detectives were drafted in to help her with the case, the passerby who discovered the body was questioned.
Whoever finds a child, we'll look at them first. We interviewed him, and we ended up eliminating him as a suspect.
The search was widened.
We had Coast Guard come and fly the river just to make sure that somebody didn't get in a car accident and the vehicle rolled in the water and he came out of a car. We went to all the grocery stores that had cameras. We went to all the gas stations that had cameras to see if we could see anyone coming in and out of a business that had a child his description. We contacted all the schools. We contacted all the daycares.
Still, no one could identify the mystery boy.
It was frustrating because you're going, here's a little boy who's, you know, drowned and alone in this world, and somebody's got to be missing him. And by the next day, we had called out the rest of the major crime team and had additional bodies out here to help us.
The case caught the attention of Mike Holman, an FBI special agent based in Oregon.
I saw it on the news. That was my first awareness of that a young child was found. And I reached out to the sheriff's office out there. I already had a relationship with these people and asked what was the story with this young child. And the reason being is that the FBI is very sensitive to matters involving children, whether it's human trafficking or child pornography or kidnapping. There were no missing children in the county or in any of the surrounding areas. And that gives me an indication that the child may have traveled from out of state, which would give the FBI jurisdiction. Trish Miller was the lead detective on this investigation. I called her to ask, what could the FBI do? So I responded over there and got involved in the investigation. Today, glad I did, because it turned out it took on not only an interstate nexus, but an international nexus.
The police soon realised they would need the help of the general public to identify the boy and faced a difficult decision.
So we have a deceased child, has no marks, no apparent cause of death other than possibly drowning. We don't know that till we have an autopsy. We have no suspects, no family, no clues, no idea how he ended up in Walport in the slough. What do we do now? And that really led to the debate over releasing his photograph in the media. That was a tough one because showing a deceased person, especially a child, we argued about that a lot.
Steve Card is a journalist at the Newport News Times and remembers the image of the boy being released.
So we had a story about that in our next paper. I know there was a lot of discussion because he was already dead at the time they had the picture. So do you print it with the eyes open? Actually, they touched up the photo so the eyes were closed, but with enough of a likeness, hoping somebody might have seen him around.
But that really was the break that we needed, was his picture in the paper.
2 days after the boy's body had been found, a woman came forward. She worked at Starbucks at the Fred Meyer Superstore in Newport, a city 15 miles up the coast from Walport. Her colleague was 27-year-old family man Christian Longo.
And she had been friends with him and babysat the children. And they happened to be neighbors of our patrol lieutenant. And she called the patrol lieutenant and said, "That looks like Zachary Longo."
4-year-old Zachary was the eldest of Christian Longo's 3 children. Christian had only started working at the superstore a few months earlier, and the family hadn't been in the area long.
A child from a family that was being homeschooled, a family from Michigan. So now you have your out-of-state nexus. So in conjunction with the sheriff's office, we started doing all the background, finding out everything we could about this family, because we didn't know at that time if there were more victims out there.
The team needed to find the family and began at Father Christian's place of work.
And got information from personnel and from other coworkers to get a little history on who was in the family, how were they here, how many people in their family.
Christian Longo was married to 34-year-old Mary Jane. As well as Zachary, they had 2 daughters, 3-year-old Sadie and 2-year-old Madison. Christian had last been seen at work on December the 18th, the day before Zachary's body was first discovered.
Chris Longo is nowhere to be found. We contacted his employer and he had not shown up for work. He got his paycheck and left.
3 weeks previously, the family had started renting a one-bed apartment at a condominium block in the Akinta Bay area of Newport. The day after Zachary had been tentatively identified, the block's manager entered the family's condo to find they'd apparently left.
There was toys and items on the floor. It looked like somebody had packed up and moved pretty quickly. They left toys behind, things like that you wouldn't, a normal family, if you have children, you're not going to leave toys behind.
With a family missing and one dead, that same day, December the 22nd, Trish got a dive team to thoroughly search the waterway where Zachary's body was found.
We just had them do a grid search, looking for evidence.
I went down, I happened to know the lieutenant from the sheriff's office who was on scene. They were looking in the water and there was talk that maybe there was a car down there somewhere, a car accident, and he had floated in. Well, when they were doing that and I was chatting with the lieutenant for a while, all of a sudden he gets called over to where the divers are and they had just found another body.
When they were doing a grid search is when they found the second child, Sadie Longo.
Sadie, like her brother Zachary, had no marks on her body. The cause of her death was unknown, but it was clear it was no accident.
I was there, and I say often there's some things you just can't unsee. And when they took Sadie out of the water with a rock tied to her foot with a pillowcase and no top and wearing only panties, I mean, you can't unsee that. And I watched some officers crying that day. The fact that she had rocks tied to her feet and with a pillowcase suggested that it was more than intentional. It was a cruel killing.
Somebody murdered both of them because then they found, also then after they found Sadie, they found the other rock in the pillowcase that had held Zachary down. It made me sad that someone would do that to a child.
So again, we didn't know where are the parents. Now we've got 2 children, a third missing child, and the missing parents.
In Walport, Oregon, the bodies of 2 children had now been found in a coastal inlet. They were identified as brother and sister Zachary and Sadie Longo. Their parents and baby sister were nowhere to be found.
A press release shortly after that with the district attorney and the sheriff, they talked about a search ongoing for the mother, the baby, and Christian Longo. The district attorney said that either they're suspects or victims. At that point, they didn't know.
It was clear the background to this case extended far beyond Lincoln County. So the investigation team needed to look at where the Longo family came from originally.
My role in this case was to bring everything to the table that the FBI brings. Manpower, out-of-state assistance.
Immediately, they would have been looking at the relationship between Mary Jane and her husband. Were there any problems in the relationship? Where is he now? His financial records, witnesses, family, friends. They would have been trying to build up a picture of this relationship, and they would then try to piece together what was happening prior to the murders.
Well, we had FBI agents contacting family in Ohio and Michigan. One of Mary Jane's sisters, Penny Dupe, talked to her on the phone. She was in Michigan. And they found out that they had reported Mary Jane as a missing person several months before.
Mary Jane Baker grew up in the town of Ann Arbor, Michigan, as one of 6 children. Penny Dupe was her little sister.
Mary Jane is 4 years older than me, and she's right in the middle. She was quiet, Very smart, very pretty, and she was the peacemaker. We had a great relationship. We were very close as kids, no secrets. We spent all of our time together. We were all each other's best friends.
The family were brought up as Jehovah's Witnesses, something Mary Jane and her other sister Sally took very seriously.
It meant the world to her. And I believe that she planned on being a Jehovah's Witness her entire life. Because the rest of us had left, and there was only her and my other sister that were left in the Jehovah's Witness faith. We still stayed together as a family, but she was closer to Sally because Sally was a Jehovah's Witness too.
Christian Longo was also brought up as a strict Jehovah's Witness.
His parents were divorced very young. He had a stepfather. He has a brother. He had a normal life, normal parents.
Christian met Mary Jane at church, and the pair fell in love when he was 18 and she was 25.
I think there was a little bit of concern just because she was a little bit older than him, but she was in love. She was happy. She was ready to get married and start a family.
By the time she was 32, Christian and Mary Jane Longo had 3 children.
They were just so happy. It was like the perfect little family. And Mary Jane spoiled her children from day one. That's all that she wanted, and they had the best of everything.
Christian Longo appeared to be doing well professionally. He worked for a distribution company that distributed the New York Times, and then started his own professional cleaning company.
They lived a good life. I mean, financially it looked like they were doing well. Almost too well, because they took like vacations 2, 3, 4 times a year. And my kids were the same age, and we made pretty decent money, and I know they drove really nice vehicles. They seemed to have toys. And I remember telling my sister either they're getting money from his parents or they're like very deeply in debt, because I couldn't quite understand where the money was coming from. They spent money like they didn't have to worry about it.
He very much saw himself as the man that would make the money. He had quite a traditional outlook of family life. He had been raised a Jehovah's Witness.
But when Trish Miller and Mike Holman started talking to the Longos' family and friends to find out more about them, they discovered Christian had turned out to be far from the perfect father and businessman.
Attempts at making a living all failed.
He had a business where he cleaned up after construction job sites. And in doing so, he stole money from his employees. He defrauded people. He wrote bad checks. That's what he was hiding.
It seemed Christian Longo wasn't only dishonest about money.
He had an affair with a parishioner. He only cared about himself. He wanted to put on a good face, that he was, someone he really wasn't.
He was going to leave my sister for her. And my sister found out the day that he was going to leave. Mary Jane felt devastated, and she was heartbroken. And he made her feel like it was her fault. So he broke her down. But he said once she had kids, she wasn't fun anymore. So she basically started spoiling him and doing whatever he asked, which was hard to swallow. Mary Jane stood by Chris. I think she hoped that one day he would get it together and, do the right thing.
Eventually, all the cheating caught up with Christian, and he was asked to leave the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Eventually everybody found out that he was a thief. He had warrants out for his arrest for theft and fraud, bad checks, and that's why he was excommunicated.
You have done something that makes them kick you out of the Jehovah's Witness faith. And anyone that's still a Jehovah's Witness is no longer allowed to associate with you. And sometimes that includes family. And that's what happened to Chris.
He was shunned by this church. So this world that he'd grown up in that was very strict and had a very clear set of boundaries and rules, he was no longer part of that. And he would have taken that as a big dent to his pride. Would have been what we call a narcissistic injury to himself. How dare you shun me?
So all of their close friends, including my sister's close friends, were now no longer a part of their life. And these are people that she had been friends with since she was little. She hadn't done anything wrong, but that was her husband. And she was going to be loyal to her husband.
I believe he talked Mary Jane into moving, that he was going to make a fresh start, be a good man, because she was very religious. She's a very religious woman, and she was, standing by her man. They lost their house or sold their house, and he was wanted. He rented a warehouse in Toledo, Ohio, and you weren't supposed to live there, but they were remodeling it, putting bathrooms in.
She kept in contact with Sally, and Sally doesn't know why, but she remembers asking Mary Jane if she thought that Chris would ever hurt her or the kids. And Mary Jane said no, he would never do that, and that was the last time she saw her.
A police sergeant from Ohio then contacted Christian Longo investigating theft of equipment from a construction site.
Didn't realize that Chris had a warrant for him at the time. Learned that he was wanted, went back to arrest him, and Chris and the family were gone. And I know the family was really concerned because Mary Jane left behind her wedding dress and a lot of her clothes and things that she wouldn't have left behind. And they knew that something was up.
Christian Longo had a pattern of fleeing. He fled from Michigan to Toledo, Ohio, where he committed some thefts there. And then when that went bad, he stole a car and a rental truck and just headed west and continued west until they ended up in Oregon.
Neither Christian or Mary Jane's family had left any details as to where they had gone, and their calls weren't being answered.
And then my mom and my sister received a postcard from North Dakota in November, and my sister had referenced 9/11 in that postcard, so we knew that it had been written in September and not in November when we received it. And then the next thing was a phone call from the FBI on December 23rd asking me to identify Sadie and Zachary.
Hearing the history of Christian's past only made Trish and the investigation team more concerned about the welfare of the rest of the family.
The family, when they moved here, they had kind of jumped around and stayed in a couple different hotels before they moved to the Landing. And we got a call from an employee of a hotel where they had stayed.
One of the housekeeping staff had discovered the family albums in a dumpster. Family albums containing child photos, child footprints, birth certificates.
Driver's license to Mary Jane Longo and personal items, they found those in the dumpster.
And then we were sure that Christian Longo was a murderer because no mother throws that kind of stuff away.
Why we were working with the FBI, because Chris at this point was on the loose, and they were trying to the public, make it seem that perhaps he could be a victim as well, but we knew that he had done something to them. And then, of course, in your heart of hearts, because Mary Jane and the baby hadn't been found, we were hoping that they were still alive, even though there's no reality to that.
On gut instinct, Trish Miller felt they needed to search the marina by the family's last known address.
Chris and Mary Jane Longo and the children lived in 211 here at the Landing. We had a dive team searching this area because this is where they lived. And since we found the family in the water in Walport, we decided to search this area. And we had divers from Benton County Dive Team just dove underneath these docks.
They made a chilling discovery. 2 suitcases sunk down below a jetty gangway.
What caught their eye is one of the suitcases had hair caught in the zipper, and that drew their attention. And they removed them from the water and found Mary Jane Longo and Madison Longo.
It had been 8 days since Zachary Longo had been discovered in the waters around Walport, Oregon. Now his mother Mary Jane and babysitter Madison had also been found, dead in a dock.
Mary Jane was naked, curled up in fetal position in a medium suitcase, which was shocking how she could fit, and Madison was in a smaller suitcase, which was weighted down with diving weights and clothing. Mary Jane had trauma around her neck. She was strangled, and Madison was too.
So I was at the paper working on it was a Thursday, it was a couple days after Christmas, and then about 3 o'clock that day, we got word that they'd found something. I ran down here, and by the time I got here, they had already recovered the suitcases with the bodies and had pulled them up down there. And when I came, they were bringing a gurney up that little walkway around this corner, and I took photos as they were pushing here along this walkway. It was raining. It was a dreary day anyway, and watching them bring the gurney across when you knew that they had found bodies in the water, it's really a feeling that's difficult to describe. It's overwhelming almost. It's one of those things you don't forget. It's kind of funny, you can almost see it again. And it's been 19 years. I can almost see him.
In this job, you see so much death, and people hurt each other, and just death and destruction and pain. You just get numb to it, and it makes you feel like there's something wrong with you a little bit because it doesn't bother you. But to do your job, you have to just, look past it and one foot in front of the other and do your investigation. You can't get emotionally upset or else you'd never come back.
On the same day the bodies of Mary Jane and Madison had been found, Penny and her sister had flown into Oregon to be nearer the search area. As soon as they'd arrived, Trish met them with the news.
My sister was all of the good qualities that all of us have and none of the bad. She was the best out of all of us. Just take me a second.
Penny and the rest of Mary Jane's family now had to come to terms with the fact that not only had she been murdered, but all of her children too.
I think what I remember about Zachary the most that haunts me is how close he was to his dad. That's what haunts me. He loved his dad so much. He idolized Chris. And Sadie was just gorgeous. I mean, she was so pretty, so happy all the time. Both of them so smart. And we barely got to know Madison. She was 2 years old. And I think, what would they be? What would they look like? What would they have done with their life? What would their voices have sounded like? We just missed out.
Trish and the rest of the investigating team knew they had to find the killer. They knew they had to find Christian Longo.
We can't find him. We haven't found his body. Someone placed him in the water. And he's got to be a suspect. And where is he?
They really ramped up efforts to find Christian Longo.
The last time anybody had seen Mary Jane or the children alive was 10:30 p.m, Saturday, December the 15th, when Christian's co-worker babysat for the couple. On the next day, Christian had worked a late shift.
At 11, he probably came home, killed his family during that time. put Mary Jane and Madison in the suitcases, and then took them down the docks and put them in the water. We had a maintenance man on the morning of the 17th discovered a broken pipe at the bottom of the dock here, and then later the divers found the bodies and suitcases at this location. So we were able to tighten up the timeline of when he took his family out of his room. So we believe that he brought the suitcases down the ramp and that he slid them into the water over here, breaking this pipe in the process. And he slid the suitcases into the water and slid them underneath the dock.
While there was autopsy evidence to show Mary Jane and baby Madison had been strangled, what had caused 4-year-old Zachary and 3-year-old Sadie to die was less clear.
After he did that, he probably went back and got Sadie and Zachary, and they were asleep, and put them in the van and drove them to Walport and threw them off the Flint Slough Bridge, we believe alive.
At 4:30 a.m. on the 17th, Longo was spotted on the bridge in his red minivan by a passing construction worker.
He was stopped on this bridge, and a citizen stopped to see if he needed some help. And he said his engine light came on and he was checking it. But in reality, what he did is he just dumped those children off the bridge.
This is one of the most distressing family annihilation cases that I've looked at. That is the most callous, cold-hearted, cruel, awful thing. It's almost unimaginable. And then he went to work. He didn't then kind of become distressed and regret what he'd done or feel sad. He went to work. Any parent that can do that to their own children, that shows an absolute depraved personality.
Now the police and FBI knew exactly what Longo had done, but not where he was. A dangerous offender was on the loose.
No one is safe. If you can kill your own children, you can kill anyone.
You're a danger to every police officer and every citizen. So yes, there's a sense of urgency to get him caught.
Around the same time Mary Jane's and Madison's bodies were discovered, Mike and the FBI got a potential lead on Longo's location.
They went to his Starbucks office and interviewed his manager. The phone rang, and the manager of the Starbucks in San Francisco called and said that Longo had applied for a job there. You can believe this or not, but the Starbucks from San Francisco called the office while the detectives were there, asking about Christian Longo's application. Would you hire him again? References, that type of stuff. So I was immediately on the phone to the FBI in San Francisco and said, here's the story, friends. I need you to go to the Starbucks and arrest him. So then the chase was on.
They had made an appointment for Chris to come in for an interview like the next day. And so the next day when he was supposed to come in, there wasn't a normal customer in Starbucks. It was all full FBI agents ready to arrest him. But he got spooked and he didn't come in. And
it's happened a lot in this case. We were always one step behind him. He walked in there and he applied for a job and never came back.
On the 6th of January 2002, murder suspect Christian Longo had fled the country. He had bought a plane ticket to Cancun with stolen credit card details.
So now we know our fugitive is somewhere in Mexico. And so now I activated the FBI in Mexico City to get involved in the case.
Dan Clegg was the FBI agent who received the call.
During the 4-year period that I was in Mexico, I was in charge of the fugitive program. I became aware of the Christian Michael Longo case in early January 2002. I had the network of people who could help me in Cancun. So we printed up wanted posters, we sent them down there, and within in the next 24 hours, 300 flyers had been distributed.
Back in the US, Mike Holman also set about increasing the heat on Longo.
In those days, America's Most Wanted was a really popular show, and a lot of people watched it on television. Trish Miller and I flew out to Washington, D.C. to be in the studio. We also put him on the FBI's 10 Most Wanted list. Longo was right up there with Osama bin Laden.
If you become one of the FBI's 10 Most Wanted, attached to it is a $50,000 reward for anybody who provides information that results directly in the arrest of the fugitive.
The appeals brought an immediate result.
2 Canadian citizens called in and said, we saw him in a youth hostel, and the trail got hot from there.
2 days later, a man phoned the US Embassy with some more vital information.
He had just seen one of the flyers that had been distributed in Cancun, and he said he was 100% certain that the person that he had taken on a day trip to tourist sites in the Cancun area was Christian Longo.
Dan met some of his contacts in Tulum, at the place where the man had supposedly picked up Longo. They soon spotted him.
We immediately drove down to Tulum, and in very short order, we were able to identify the cabana, the hut that he was sleeping in. And it was made of bamboo, and we could actually see through the walls, and it was lit on the inside. And we could see that there was this man that obviously fit the description of Christian Longo. When I approached him at the door of the cabana, I said, "You're Christian Longo?" And he said, "No, my name's Michael." And I said, "Yes, Christian Michael Longo." And I held up the flyer with his photo and his description on it. And he sort of slumped and looked down, and he knew that the game was up, because there was no mistaking him from that photo on the flyer.
However, it took a bit of persuasion to get Longo to return to the US.
Mexico does not believe in the death penalty, and since this was a death penalty case, they will not agree to they won't extradite. Chris would have to ask for it. So Dan Clegg talked to him about the realities of sitting in a Mexican jail. There's hundreds of people in one room. It's dirty, stinky. Food is very limited. If you want anything more than gruel, your family has to bring it. And Chris decided that he didn't want to sit in a Mexican jail, so he agreed to accompany Agent Clegg back to the United States.
Dan Clegg wasn't just there for company. He wanted to extract any kind of confession he could from Longo.
So I was curious and talked to him quite extensively about what the Jehovah's Witnesses believe about God and the afterlife. He was crying, he was emotional. It was hard for me to tell if he was crying because of his situation or if he was crying because, he had actually killed his family. But I stated to him, so it sounds like you sent them to a better place. And it was at that point that he acknowledged to me on the plane that yes, that's what happened.
Though later, when formally interviewed on tape, Longo didn't directly admit to anything.
I know you did it. Roy knows you did it. You know you did it. You can withhold the yeah, I did it. You can withhold how you did it. The fact remains you did it. And Chris, there eventually has to come a time that you do that. I think now's the time. Let's close the book, Chris.
I'm gonna wait.
Okay.
Sorry.
Don't be sorry for me. It's not going to make a bit of difference for me.
I know, but I realize that it's not what you'd prefer to hear. That's what I'm sorry for.
It's not. It's not what I prefer to hear.
Longo, he tries to present himself as a victim in all of this. I'm protecting my family by doing this. I'm protecting them from the embarrassment of living with my failures. And this is something that I've seen in a lot of people who've got very narcissistic traits, who are very egocentric. It's me, 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 me. without thinking about anybody else.
It soon became clear what Christian Longo's motive for the murders was.
He didn't want the wife who he had married to get remarried to another man. He didn't want a stepfather to raise his 3 children. And he was so selfish that it was just easier for him, in his twisted mind, to kill his wife and 3 kids. His life had spun completely out of control, and he had hit rock bottom. But he was too much of a coward to kill himself, so he killed his wife and 3 kids instead. He was fatally self-centered.
In March 2003, in Newport, Lincoln County Courthouse, Christian Longo went on trial for the murder of his family.
So I remember the first time he came in and looking at him, my first reaction was, that's my brother-in-law. And then my second reaction is, that's my brother-in-law that killed my sister. And I remember hyperventilating. I don't think I've ever had a panic attack in my life.
Longo pleaded guilty to the murder of Mary Jane and his youngest child, Madison. But to the astonishment of everybody, he then claimed that Mary Jane had killed Sadie and Zachary.
He actually took the stand and tried to convince the jury that none of this was his fault, that it was his wife that forced him to do this because she killed 2 of the children.
According to Longo, when he discovered that, he flew into a rage and killed her. And then he realized that although Mary Jane had tried to kill the baby wasn't dead, so that he felt he needed to finish the job because the baby wasn't going to survive.
It was hard. It was hard to sit there every single day, because every single day I wanted to get up and hurt him, because we had to sit there and look at him every single day, especially when he's saying horrible things about my sister, and we have to sit there and listen to it.
I was angry about it. When I sit as a father with young children, sitting there listening to it, and especially when he was testifying at his own trial, trying to lay the blame on his wife, it made me angry. How I couldn't comprehend how somebody could even think that way.
I felt confident. I think we put on a good case. Number one, he confessed to 2 of the murders, but we had witnesses that saw him on the Lint-Flew Bridge. They didn't see him throw the kids off, but he was stopped on the bridge. There was evidence in the van. We were very confident in our case.
So were the jury.
So at the conclusion of the trial, the jury unanimously found that he was guilty of killing the other 2 children. So at that point, then, he was guilty of killing all 4 family members.
Following the jury's decision, Christian Longo was sentenced to death.
He's a horrible human being. Horrible doesn't even describe it. He's not even human. The last thing those children saw was their dad killing them. How do you do that? My sister, there was not a mean bone in her body. Mary Jane trusted everyone. She was loyal to a fault, and she was one of the best mothers I ever knew. I miss her every second of every day.
I think that death is too easy for him. I would have preferred that he got life in prison and never got out. He's very social. I don't think he would do really well in a normal jail population, prison population. I think that he would be victimized, and I was okay with that.
For all involved, it was a case they would never forget.
So I'm proud of that, the way the FBI reacted. And it wasn't just me. All I did was make the big beast do what it's capable of doing.
Zachary, we always felt like he kind of solved the case for us just because he broke loose and was found. Otherwise, who knows? So Zachary kind of opened the doors for us and kind of saved his family. He did.